One day, Naofumi Iwatani would be just a normal scientist, a forensic scientist at that, someone that would just want to find and discover more and more throughout his life. On top of that, he wanted to prove evidence of people that did when they did the wrong, when they're in the wrong, when they would kill people, when they would do foul things. Naofumi would be the one that would solve it all, until that normal forensic scientist would be struck by lightning. This lightning then coursed through his veins, gave him a power unknown to him, unknown to everything and everyone. And this would be known as the Speed Force. And this is not your normal Naofumi. When being struck by lightning, Naofumi would be sent to a brand new plane of existence. But in the darkness and during the strike of the lightning and during the blackouts, he can look in the mirror, a mirror that was somewhat imaginary. And he had another face staring back at him that looked nothing like himself. But the face just smiled and just dissipated as fast as it came. Immediately he wakes up in a brand new area besides 3 other people, and he looks at himself to see that he's in a suit of armor of some sorts, and it looks like he's wearing all red, an emblem of a lightning bolt on his chest, and some obviously tampered with clothing. He doesn't know where this came from, or this is what came with this world that he just joined, but he'll soon have to find out what will happen to him, because now Naofumi is in a brand new world, and he'll be bringing the lightning with him, as Naofumi is the legendary Speedster hero. Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm here with Naofumi, the legendary Speedster hero. Obviously a What If Naofumi fanfiction. And I won't waste too much time, and I'll try to get through this as quick as possible. I want to give a shout out to all my members. If you want to be a member, it is $2.99. You get these videos early with no ads at all. And shout outs like this. Shout out to my boy or girl or anything. I'm just going to say shout out to them. Shadow Legacy. Shout out to Rashed Al Zainin. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly. Shout out to Slushy, Hellhound, Angel, Jelly, Highest Femboy Vods, Alex, I believe Wolf, but I'll call him Ray Burns, Sergeant Salamander, Lucas Brown, Rob the King, the GOAT himself, the Blue Exorcist, Maria, the Dragon Lord, Wikipedia, Hello Hi, and All Might. I hope all of y'all enjoy this, and I want to take a special little shout out to all of those people for supporting me, supporting the channel. But you can also support the channel by hitting the sub button below, the like button below, and also check the description for my Discord. And you can join the Discord if you feel like it. My mod told me to promote it more, so that's what I'm doing. And all that said, let's just get right into the what if. Let's get it. Naofumi looks to his left and sees something very odd. 3 people with 3 different weapons. One with a sword, one with a spear, and one with the bow. He has no clue what's exactly going on, and frankly, he looks at his suit once again and doesn't know what he is exactly. The knights men and also the noblemen of the kingdom walk in, and then they begin to see the heroes. They see the sword, they see the spear, they see the bow, but they don't see the shield. They're not so sure what this even is, what even happened. Naofumi, still looking at himself in awe, looks at the people there that are greeting them, and they question who Naofumi is as well. Naofumi then says that he's not even so sure what's even going on, but his name is Naofumi Iwatani, and that he is sent here for some reason. They begin to ask exactly who he is in terms of what type of hero, but he has no weapon, he just has a suit. He's not sure, but just as he says this, he slams into the wall at super speeds. Everybody is in complete shock, in complete awe. How is he able to move that fast? They couldn't even see it. As they're awing over this though, Naofumi is basically moaning and groaning in pain. The fact that he just slammed into a brick wall did not feel so good. But a couple seconds later, it felt like he was all healed up, or at least to the point where he can get up without too much pain. It seems that he has faster regeneration, or of some sorts at least. But even with that said, the people there still need to bring the heroes to the king, so that's exactly what they do. The king meets all 4 of the heroes, seeing that there's no shield hero this time around, but is confused at who this person is, beginning to say that he must not be a hero, but someone that is basically a sideman to the king, or basically an advisor to the king. Starts telling him that this man has insane speed. It seems like he could run extremely fast. The king kind of mocks it, but again, Naofumi shows exactly what he's talking about as lightning arrives around him and he dashes in front of the king and then back to the line. He begins to say that he actually seems to have gotten a little bit more control over it, but it's still extremely hard to use, and he's also extremely hungry now. But with that said, the king lets it slide. Of course, it's not the shield hero, but it is the replacement for the shield hero, so he's not so sure if he should trust him. But with that said, they send them away after explaining exactly what the waves of catastrophe are. The waves are basically a demonic invasion that comes every so often in this world, and they need those heroes to stop them. When they leave though, the 4 of them head to this hotel-like room and begin talking about this world, about it so similar to a video game, in which Naofumi agrees, being someone that has played video games before to an extensive degree, but still, he doesn't spend too much time nowadays as in terms of his adult life. They introduce each other, and by name of course, one being Motoyasu, one being Ren, and one being Itsuki. But the difference is, Naofumi is a lot older than them. By a lot, I mean a couple 3 to 4 years. He is basically a forensic scientist, so he's been through college already. But they're kinda shocked to even hear this, that he must be extremely smart, but he doesn't know much about the game. So they explain what they know so far, and Naofumi begins to analyze exactly what they're saying. And in a matter of seconds, he understands exactly what they're talking about. But it's kind of weird, how was he able to do that so fast? What allowed him to do that so fast? He's kind of not sure. Maybe it has something to do with his speed? Does he have super speed? He's not entirely sure, but he just assumed he would run fast, not just, well, think fast as well. That's something totally different. But if that's true, that means his leveling system will make him stronger. That means he'll be able to do even more things in the future. That's what he needs to set his goals to. He needs to go to that. So that's going to be the goal for Naofumi, but that goal will be a lot more difficult when they arrive in the kingdom once again, or the throne room, and the king basically shows them that nobody wants to go with Naofumi. Being the replacement of the shield hero and hearing that he has limited knowledge on the world, not really thinking about his fast learning skills, but still, nonetheless, he'll have to do what he has to do, and he'll have to use what he can work with. And that is his speed. His speed alone will hopefully carry him through all of this time, and he'll figure out if that's true off the bat. Immediately though, after being released from the king and being given a substantial amount of money, especially with nobody being with him, he tries his best to figure out every little aspect of his leveling system, learning about his speed's leveling system, learning about his techniques he can use. Anything that he can possibly figure out, he wants to figure out, and it all has to do with him leveling up, and he learns that relatively quickly. But he's going to immediately head over to a blacksmith. Maybe he can get some new armor upgrades, and maybe he can even adapt the armor to the thing that he has on. It's a suit for him running really fast and doing other things like that. But the real question is, can it be adjusted? So that's what he wants to know. He heads over to a man by the name of Erhard. Erhard gives him some tips and actually offers him some weapons, but these weapons do not work. As the Speedster hero, he cannot do a thing about weaponry. But he does ask about adjusting his armor, and of course Erhard has some ideas, and he begins to pull out some various other clothings that would give him special boosts based on his level. And he begins to put them on, and immediately they begin to alter his suit. Instead of the red suit that he normally has, it would transition into this green and black suit, and with a black emblem on the very middle, the majority being that of a dark green. But still, he's able to adjust his suit how he wants. he figures that not only does other clothing affect the style of the suit, but it affects how the boosts work. So the suit he currently has on gives him more strength and more durability, but he can also switch it out for something that's lighter, makes him more light on his feet, and maybe can even up his speed, which is already abnormal, but even higher than normal. So he decides that he's going to take some of the clothing, pays Earhart some money, and even gives him some extra, and says that if he needs anything, to ask for some favors, and he's sure that he can do that. And Naofumi even asks about what else is around them, where else could he go, and Earhart begins to point out other towns that are around them. One more specifically as Loot Village, but Loot Village is something that he can go to once he levels up a little bit more. So Naofumi decides to run off, sprinting through the city, getting more of a grasp on his powers, and he ends up in a forest. During that forest, he begins to run around trying to avoid tree after tree just to get used to his superhuman, well, at the end of the day, it's superhuman speed. He tries to basically bounce around every tree and defeat monster after monster. Fighting some small balloon-like monsters that are orange in color, he easily is able to phase his hand or just speedster punch him right in the monster's face, sort of, just, hit the monster. And every time he hits the monster, they more or less just obliterate and fall over, except for some of the other monsters. This is when he does learn that he can use his speed for far more than just punching. He can use it for something other known as phasing. Phasing normally would allow you to just phase through walls or walk through a wall because you put your molecules at a state where you can just slide right through them, basically as if you were pure air. But in this case, he's able to use that so-called phasing to his advantage, and he's able to more or less defeat monsters that sometimes are even higher level than him to basically kill them and gain levels at an insane and rapid rate. On top of that, his super speed allows him to rack up and kill a ton of monsters practically instantaneously. But the only problem is, let's just say his stamina is going down really fast. Every time he does this, every time he runs around and kills a bunch of monsters, he's extremely tired, extremely hungry, and he's already spent a ton of money on food. That is definitely a problem. Optimization in that regard is going to have to happen, but he does feel that the best way of doing that is getting party members. And one night he begins to walk out and actually search for party members himself. But when he doesn't find anybody and nobody actually wants to go with him, not knowing the reason why, someone actually does approach him in that vulnerable quote-unquote state. It's the slave market owner, there to offer him a chance at a slave himself, that he can get a slave that would obey his every word. But Naofumi's not really up for that. He doesn't want a slave, but he doesn't like the idea of him having slaves, or the slave market basically selling them. So he decides to walk in anyways with him and look for a slave that he can buy, but he's not going to put a slave crest on them. And after some searching, he does come across a little girl. Feeling really bad for her, he decides to actually buy the girl by the name of Raftalia. Being that she is a demi-human, she's not quite a human, but still she is part human. Maybe she'll be able to help him in the long run. The slave market owner basically says that he really should get the slave crest, but Naofumi refuses, saying that if she wants to fight, she will fight, and that she can help him out in various other ways as well. So he decides to take her to Earhart and get her some new armor and some clothing and also a sword. Quickly, he begins to explain to her what's going to have to happen. And she is kind of scared, but says that she wants to help the best she possibly can because she doesn't want to disappoint. In which Naofumi makes it clearly and very apparent that there is no disappointing. It's that she'll try her best, and if he sees that, well, she can't basically handle the legitimate fights, then she'll just have to stay out of them. He set her free for a reason, not for her to be a slave, but helping him would definitely be beneficial. So they start training together once again, leveling up, and Raftalia gets more and more comfortable with the idea of killing things, even killing things that will produce blood. But after some time, they do realize that the money is getting cut short, especially with how much Naofumi needs to eat and energize himself. And yeah, he begins to level up a stamina-like aspect of himself so he doesn't have to eat as much, but that is still nowhere near the amount he needs. So he super speeds them both to Loot Village and sells as much as he possibly can, but quickly learns that he actually can make a quick buck at a cave nearby using a pickaxe that he can basically get from the village for free. So he super speeds them all the way to the cave and begins to mine all the ores he possibly can at insane speeds, trying to get a ton of them. After gathering practically every single one of them, he begins to hear a growling and a roar come up from behind. It's actually a two-headed monster. A two-headed dog monster begins charging at them, and Naofumi immediately punches the dog in the face, but Raphtalia is quaking in fear. He runs back to her and tells her that it's okay, that she can learn how to fight the fear, learn to fight all of the emotions she's feeling right now, channel them and use them as a source. When she hears this though, she immediately grips her sword and charges forward, slicing at the monster, letting Naofumi finish it off once again with one final super speed punch. Once that happens, he completely kills the monster and absorbs as much as possible into his little emblem, being that as his storage or his gem, how the other heroes would have the gem on their weapons. Naofumi has it on his chest with his suits. So he takes Raphtalia out of the cave, they sell the stones or the gems, and luckily they've had some very beneficial time leveling up. After this, nothing much else happens. It's just a lot of grinding and leveling up, which is pretty quick and fast with Naofumi and Raphtalia being on relatively the same page. A month passes and the wave is soon to be upon them, but Naofumi and Raphtalia have grown substantially. Raphtalia actually has grown into a young woman, being that of demi-humans have that kind of regard, and when they level up, they actually grow up. That's kind of like their aging system, you could say. And Naofumi has grown exponentially as well. Raphtalia being at a level of about 25 to 27, and Naofumi being at a level of about 35 to 37. So he's definitely higher level than her, but he also has been working on a lot of skills. Of course, his speedster powers and running around at insane speeds is not something he'll get used to immediately. So yeah, he was able to more or less learn how to super speed everywhere, but it took him some time to perfect it. And over this month, he felt that he more or less did just that. But it kind of limited his leveling up. Frankly, he could have got insane amounts of levels if he already knew how to run around and completely control it all the time. Even his phasing isn't perfect. He sometimes messes up and actually breaks a finger or two. So now he kind of has a grip on all of that. Unluckily enough though, some of the other skills that he knows, or at least are in his character tree, he can't use them because he doesn't know how they even work. He didn't have enough time to actually learn them, and if he spent too much time on those, he wouldn't have been able to actually level up. But with that said, it was still fruitful training, beneficial, and him and Raphtalia decide to head to the Dragon Hourglass to check how much time it is before the next wave. When they arrive, they see that the wave is going to happen in 24 hours. And soon, right after they arrive though, the other three heroes arrive as well. And Motoyasu tries to make the moves on Raphtalia, but Raphtalia immediately rejects him, saying that he's just weird. Why would she ever get with him? Look at his hair. In which Naofumi kind of laughs about, and Motoyasu just awkwardly backs up. Naofumi then explains who she is, and that he saved her more or less from a slave market. But unfortunately, slaves are kind of, legal, so he can't just run in and break them all free, and he might actually get in trouble for that. And he'll have to do that via the political way. But even that is kind of hard when nobody really talks to him. In which some of the other heroes say that they'll actually speak with the other politicians or the people of the kingdom about that, but we all know that's never going to happen. But Naofumi basically just makes it apparent that Raphtalia is not a slave, and frankly, he makes it apparent without even thinking about any repercussions if they actually did think she was a slave. He just wanted to make that known that she wasn't. But with all that said, he says his goodbyes and they're still on decent terms, so nothing really happens there. He heads off with Raphtalia back to Loot Village to basically just get ready and set up. Same thing, he takes a visit to Erhard using his super speed to get as much supplies as he possibly can with the money he currently has, which is still kind of running a little bit short because at the end of the day, he still isn't perfect in terms of his food consumption and he has to pay a lot of money for some good food. But maybe he'll be able to figure that out sooner than later, or rather than later. But with that said, the wave is about to be upon them, the first wave that they'll have to fight. So Naofumi waits and sees that a screen pops up on his interface, saying that he can be transported to the main boss, but he decides not to. He wants to actually stick around Loot Village and some other places that he's actually found around, some very small villages that are around the area, and he wants to make sure that they're all protected. So using his super speed, he kind of just runs around obliterating as many monsters as possible, and Raphtalia is there at Loot Village slicing through any monsters she has to slice through as well. She may only be level 25 until level 27, but she is still extremely strong and knows how to basically use that sword to a good extent. And after some time, finally the wave begins to subside, and the people of Loot Village and various other really small villages begin to thank Naofumi and Raphtalia for all the help, in which Naofumi says that it's really no problem, it's just the job of a hero. He dashes away and arrives back at Loot Village to see that it is a little messed up, but he's able to basically run around like crazy and build most of the stuff back to somewhat normal and some other stuff to correctionally normal, so that they'll have to just do a little bit of maintenance, which is kind of perfect in this instance. But after some time, they hear about the kingdom having a state dinner. A state dinner is perfect. Naofumi needs to get some free food in him, and this would be a great time. But the main thing he kind of wants is like some magic food pill or something that would basically provide him with calories, or maybe like a food bar or something that would give him enough calories to basically be good. But he's not sure if he'll even ever find something like that. He'll probably have to find some magic user of some sorts. But with that said, Naofumi decides to head over with Raphtalia, and when they arrive at the kingdom, or at least, you know, the ballroom like area with all the food, he begins to chow down with Raphtalia and just hang out and talk to any people he can, really. Most people don't really find an interest in Naofumi. They do think that he's kind of odd, but other than that, he just is kind of just there. And during some time where he's sitting in a windowsill talking to Raphtalia, Motoyasu approaches him, in which Naofumi questions why he did. "Oh, yeah, what's up, Motoyasu?" Immediately, Motoyasu throws this glove on the ground and says that he challenges Naofumi to a duel. "Why are you challenging me to a duel? I don't get it." He begins to explain that he's heard that Raphtalia is actually a slave, and that he just said those things because he didn't want them to basically catch onto his trail. No, she's not a slave. She can even tell you that. She actually doesn't even have a slave crest on, which is what you need to be a slave. In which Naofumi's words go on deaf ears, and Motoyasu, still insistent, and so is mine, a devilish-like female that is basically controlling him, it seems, already has it basically made out that Naofumi is a slave owner. Naofumi continuously tries to tell him that's just not the case, but he doesn't listen, and they grab Raphtalia, muzzling her. This pisses off Naofumi, and he immediately phases over and phases her out of the person that is grabbing her and basically moves her away. "Now listen, I'll duel him, but you're not gonna keep her captive, muzzle her." And as he says this, he breaks off her muzzle. "You're not gonna do that. That's a problem. Or we're actually going to have an issue." Naofumi makes this apparently clear, and he says that he wants to be the hero for this entire place, this entire world, whatever he has to do. But if they're gonna act like villains, he's going to treat them like them, or like that, no matter what. In which all of them are kind of shocked to hear this, and Motoyasu tells him that that's enough talk and that it's time for battle. So they head down to the arena, and Raphtalia watches basically anxiously and to see if Naofumi can beat Motoyasu. But at the end of the day, let's just say the amount of people and the amount of monsters Naofumi was able to defeat during the wave helped him get a little bit of a leg up in terms of leveling. Especially because now that he knows how to use his powers a lot better, he can truly feel the lightning. Motoyasu begins to try and strike him down, but his reflexes alone are way too much for Motoyasu. He's not even using his super speed. He's just dodging out of just superhuman reflexes. Seeing something happen in like slow motion, he's able to easily dodge, land multiple shots to his body, hitting multiple punch after punch, and then one solid uppercut right to his chin. Motoyasu can feel these punches, and he's not even using his super speed. He tries to strike Naofumi again using one of his more powerful attacks, but even that is easily dodged by using his super speed and just phasing through the attack itself. Naofumi trips Motoyasu one time, slamming him into the ground and putting his foot on his chest. "Okay, this is over. Stop fighting me. I told you she's not a slave, and it's blatantly obvious that I treat her like a party member. You need to stop listening to this woman." Immediately, Motoyasu gets mad and tries to strike Naofumi, in which it completely misses. But he decides that he's going to just grab his spear and use his ultimate attack, and as he does just that, a giant dust cloud is just shown all around Naofumi, as if he was just struck down. In which Motoyasu thinks that he hit Naofumi, but he really didn't, taking a supersonic punch right to the face immediately after. Shockwaves are sent throughout the arena, and even some of the people in the stands can feel the aftermath. Naofumi lands the nastiest right hand on the jaw of Motoyasu, knocking him out cold, in which he begins to walk away, and with Motoyasu just completely on the ground, unconscious. He tells Rautalia that it's time to leave and that they don't need to deal with them anymore, at least not for now. Mine mocks him, saying that it doesn't matter, that a hero like him will never be worth jack squat. But even Naofumi just ignores her. But these words would get under his skin. The fact that he's practically saving this world, but what resentment do they have against him? What is their problem? That begins to boil into this odd rage that is within Naofumi, but that rage will slowly subside, at least for now. Naofumi heads out with Rautalia and decides that maybe it's time to actually get a brand new party member. They begin to look through to see if they can actually find a party member that would be good enough, and he decides something, that maybe he'll get this little egg. This egg right here actually could be pretty decent, in which the slave market owner says that at the bare minimum it will be a Philolial, in which they do get the slave crest because obviously this is a monster, so they want to make sure that the monster is well tamed, at least for now, and takes the monster out. But after a couple days, and actually not too long at all, the monster does hatch, but it's kind of odd. The minimum of Philolial is interesting, but this monster is way different than just that. This monster is very reminiscent of a dog. Maybe reminiscent of a werewolf? He's not so sure, but there are basically factors that make him believe that it is some werewolf-like monster, but even he doesn't even know. It's some small little dog that may turn into a wolf-like creature in the future, and well, a couple days pass and that is exactly the case, turning into a bigger wolf. But when the wolf runs, lightning trails behind him and he dashes like crazy. He can feel the force, the speed force within him. That dog, well, in which Naofumi uncharacteristically, or more like, uncreatively calls him Sparky, is one of just like him. He's a speedster just like Naofumi. And this is going to be extremely beneficial. But soon after, someone approaches Loot Village. It's Motoyasu, Mine, and an entire knight army, or at least a group of them. And they begin to say that based on royal decree, Motoyasu is to have Loot Village for himself, in which Naofumi refuses this, saying that that is ridiculous and that he will not give up this village to him, especially to give taxes like the way they are doing. This village is fair for pricing and fair for the people that live here, and they will not change that. In which Motoyasu doesn't know what to say, and Mine basically is about to say that they're going to change, that they're not going to change a thing, but a shadow appears showing her this odd looking thing to read. in which forces Mine off of the area, and Mine gets pissed, saying that Naofumi will basically be here the next time they come, and they'll shut it all down. Naofumi shrugs and says that the Loot Village will be just fine, and he promises that, and that he can race back in an instant if a problem occurs. So Naofumi, Raphtalia, and Sparky then begin to head off to their next village/journey. During this journey though, Sparky grows in size once again and is a giant wolf now. Basically the height we're talking, not length, but the height of Naofumi is how tall Sparky is. Sparky is that tall and really, really long, basically a giant wolf, in which Naofumi says that he has a great idea for Raphtalia to hop on Sparky's back, and that they'll run at a decent rate so Raphtalia doesn't, go and fall off of Sparky and basically hurt herself bad. They'll run really fast to the next village. And when they begin to do that, they come across a trader that is actually getting harassed by multiple bandits. But quickly, Sparky and Naofumi, using their speed, just knock out every single one of them and tie them up as if it were nothing, and put bags over all of their heads so that they cannot see what's going on. Quickly, Naofumi explains what he just did and who he is to the trader, and the trader says that he is in complete debt to Naofumi and that he will help him no matter or how he can think of. In which Naofumi says that he'll take anything he possibly can, in which they allow the trader to basically travel with them until they arrive at the place they want to go, or the trader wants to go. In which when they arrive, the trader begins to explain to Naofumi various trading tactics and everything he's learned over all this time. Naofumi learns more and more and learns how to basically trade and make money, substantial amounts of money at that. In which this is good because he does need a good amount of money, and at the end of the day he doesn't exactly have that. But during this little trip, he actually does come across someone, a magic owner of some sorts, that she runs a store, but she's very in-depth in magic. Speaking with him, and he even asks about this whole idea of making a magical food that would allow him to eat it, and then he can basically store up calories like that way easier. In which she says that's completely possible, and she even has a spell that he can learn and someone on his team can learn. In which he volunteers Raphtalia, obviously, because Raphtalia is pretty in-depth with the language here. And she learns how to actually create this food, anything they would like, that actually is pretty high in calories. And this is specifically for Naofumi. Anybody else eats it, they'll probably feel sick the entire day. Naofumi thinks that this is a great thing, but some more time passes and their first little mission then arrives. Their first mission is to head to a village that seemingly has a bit of a plant problem. So Naofumi takes some herbicide and begins to head over with his party. And when he arrives, that plant problem seems to be extremely, and when I mean extremely out of hand. The plant problem is ridiculous. Monster plants running around and attacking people, honestly everybody in that entire village. Naofumi heads up and begins to talk about giving them some herbicide, but even this herbicide won't be as effective unless he puts it exactly within the core of the plant and exactly within the roots, so that the herbicide can kill it off and exterminate the entire gene pool of the plant. So that's exactly what Naofumi will do. But before he does that, he'll do some tampering. Of course, he's a pretty good scientist himself, so he should be able to come up with an even more potent version of this herbicide, in which in a couple hours he was actually able to do so, and it should be just enough to actually do that. So Sparky and Raphtalia, and also obviously Naofumi, heads over and begins to try and more or less exterminate this plant. Sparky and Raphtalia covers Naofumi as he begins to super speed his way into the core of the plant, phasing through more and more of the area, getting within the roots, leaving the herbicide there, and basically polluting the plant with this herbicide. As the herbicide begins to spread throughout the plant, the green begins to fade away, crumble, and the plant begins to die. Naofumi has a sigh of relief with his party members that he was able to finish this up relatively quickly and also handle it with relative ease. He heads back to the people of the village and asks how that even occurred in the first place, and they begin to explain something that would frustrate Naofumi even more. It would frustrate him and that would be because Motoyasu brought a cursed seed into this village trying to cure a quote-unquote famine, and it did this. It made the entire place a living hell. Naofumi is pretty mad about this, but he can't do anything about it now. But the idea that there's even more places probably that have problems like this is unheard of for him. It frustrates him. It boils it underneath his skin that he's not fast enough to even help every single person. Yes, maybe that is impractical. Maybe it's impossible. But still, he wants to help everyone here. But these people, the so-called heroes, they're not helping at all. They're hurting. They're not helping anybody in this country. Naofumi doesn't even know what to say after the fact and waves them all goodbye as they offer some stuff to take, but Naofumi doesn't take it, saying that he'll be just fine. He heads off to his next little trading mission of some sorts, which is at a hot springs. But luckily, it's nothing too drastic over there. The delivery is made and they relax at the hot springs, and Naofumi gets out of his suit of some sorts, in which obviously he can take it off and on, but it's kind of like he needs it on more or less when he's fighting. Because if he doesn't, then he'll kind of burn up his clothing, his shoes, and stuff like that. It's like a frictionless suit in a way. And he just relaxes, gets ready, and just heads to bed. The next morning, he wakes up to a surprise. A huge boar that they cooked up for food. Raphtalia and Sparky did all this for him, giving him a nice breakfast, if you can call it that, but still. It's definitely a really good thought, and it makes Naofumi feel a little bit better about the entire situation. And that's until he gets one last thing. Well, there's a mission that comes up, and a mission that he'll have to head over to another village that is being polluted. So he heads over and begins to run around it like crazy to basically subdue the pollution coming in and out and part it in a different way. When he does that, he sees that it's still a problem, that the pollution is still pouring in. It seems like it wasn't a simple fix like he thought initially. Naofumi jogs into the place or the village and begins asking what's going on, in which the village leader begins to say that the sword hero Ren killed a dragon above them, but didn't get rid of the body, so it's decomposing and polluting their entire village, and it's just putting them all in a horrible, horrible, sick state. This frustrates Naofumi. Another one of the heroes not doing their job. That's pissing him off. That's making him extremely mad. Naofumi doesn't know what to do. What is he supposed to do? He can't just discipline these people. They're not going to listen. They have egos out of their mind, so what is he supposed to say to them? He doesn't know, but maybe the words will come across eventually, so he decides that he'll clean up the mess up there. So he super speeds up there with Sparky, telling Raphtalia to stay down just so that she doesn't get too badly infected. So they run up and begin cutting it up into pieces, but just as they're super speeding the dragon to pieces, the dragon begins to awaken. So both Sparky and Naofumi begin to phase the dragon back into the mountain, getting only his head sticking out, and he's completely stuck. Naofumi is able to defeat it relatively easily from here, and so does Sparky, throwing a lightning bolt at its neck. And the lightning bolt may not be extremely strong, but since the dragon is kind of in a extremely vulnerable state, it does some relatively good damage, defeating the dragon with relative ease. He actually does know that this speedster power is a positive. Thank God it is, because he wouldn't be able to handle another negative. He wonders that without this power, would he really be able to do much? And honestly, it's blatantly obvious that he wouldn't be able to help at all. So luckily, he was blessed with this thing called the Speed Force. But this anger, this frustration with these other heroes is beginning to boil over within Naofumi, and he doesn't even realize that something else is taking over. Not yet, but soon to come. Naofumi races down with Sparky and begins to tell Raphtalia exactly what happened and tell her that, well, everything turned out alright. After handling that business, they basically tell the village that everything turned out great and that they decomposed, got rid of, and anything they possibly had to do, they handled for them, so they don't have to worry about it. In which they're extremely grateful, saying that the Flash, or that's what they call him, the Blur, or the Streak. What would you like to be called? The Flash kind of sounds cool. I like that. But of course you can just call me Naofumi. They're happy to call him Naofumi as well, but they do like the name the Flash Hero or something like that. The Speedster Hero sounds awesome as well. And Naofumi waves them goodbye and thanks them for all the help, at least in terms of getting them extra supplies on their little trip. Naofumi does realize, though, that it's time to head back to the kingdom. That nonetheless, even with Mind being the way she is and the way they act in terms of the kingdom, he still has to head over and protect it. So that's exactly what he does. He heads back over to the kingdom, super speeding through with Raphtalia and Sparky, but they come across a little girl by the name of Melty. Sparky runs over and begins to basically play with her, and she begins to ask if they can please take her back to the kingdom because she got lost. In which Naofumi doesn't see a problem with this at all, helping her on Sparky's back as they head to the kingdom once again. When they arrive, her and Sparky actually just run about for a little bit, and as Naofumi and Raphtalia are walking around, they actually see Motoyasu, the spear hero, approach with a bunch of knights and also Mine, telling Naofumi to give up the slaves right now. Look, man, I don't have slaves. It's that simple. The monster over there technically, I guess, has a slave crest, but it's also a monster. So I can't just not have a slave crest on it. It's kind of like not having a collar on a dog. Doesn't make sense. They'll be lost forever. I have to, if we walk them, I can't have my dog run around and hurt people. Doesn't that make sense? And Motoyasu just says that he's cruel. How would he think of that monster as a dog, as a pet, as a slave? He's an oversized dog. He's a wolf, Motoyasu. You sound kind of dumb. I don't know what to tell you. Mine begins to complain once again and says that a hero like Naofumi should be banished. Banished right now. But a very young voice comes up from behind. It's Melty. Melty begins to say that there will be no banishment of this hero. The Speedster hero, or from the grapevine heard called the Flash, will not be banished. That is ridiculous. Mine begins to dispute, saying that her younger sister has no say, in which Naofumi learns of the heritage of Melty, learning that she is part royalty. Frustrating him, he doesn't really think very clearly. He's just mad, storms off with his party, but Melty tries to say that she has no ill will toward him and just wants to help. This is hard for Naofumi to even believe. He doesn't know if he wants to believe it, so he decides that he'll just leave for now and he'll head off and begin scouting for the next wave that is going to occur very soon. But before that can even happen, he heads over to the Dragon Hourglass. Both of his party members are about level 40. They need their class upgrades. But when they go in, they're rejected. Everything seems to be so bad. Everything seems to be against Naofumi. Why is that the case? Why would it be that way? Naofumi doesn't even know, but he's just frustrated more and more. And let's just say this last thing will tip him over the edge. He heads over to a nearby quote-unquote village, but he finds a refugee camp. The refugee camp is there begging for food, begging. And when he hears that it was all because of the bow hero Itsuki, he's on the bridge of losing his mind. He helps everyone out as quick as possible and leaves. Of course, he was never a hero for se at his own world, but he was a forensic scientist for the police. He helped people every single day. That was his day job. The fact that these teens, these kids, are going to act with their egos only at hand, not even thinking about the well-being of others, that bothers him extremely bad. But what he doesn't know is that what's boiling over within him is activating a brand new power. Activating his curse series. This curse series is a whole nother ballgame though. Something, or more like someone, was waiting for him to unlock it. Naofumi heads over and finally arrives at a place where Ren and Itsuki are currently. He begins to basically berate them, saying that they did a horrible job, that Ren basically left a decomposing dragon and gave a ton of people a plague. And Itsuki, yeah, you might have caused a revolution, but you just put another terrible power into power. What was the point? And he is just frustrated. Raphtalia and even Sparky are trying to get him to calm down, but he's getting more and more mad, throwing a table at Ren and just smacking Itsuki upside the head, extremely hard to the point that he crashes into multiple tables. Naofumi is enraged, and he begins walking out of the area with his party. It seems that his anger is slowly but surely taking over. Naofumi then realizes that the wave is upon them. It's very soon. It's only a matter of time before this next wave is going to occur, and that's exactly what's going to happen. He decides that he'll protect Loot Village with whatever he can, and his power may even seem to be stronger than normal. It seems that his power has been elevated. He doesn't understand how, but he doesn't question it. It might be the rage, it might not be the rage, but it seems like this power that he has within him is different, intertwining itself, becoming stronger. Naofumi destroys every single monster there as if it were nothing, and waiting for hours on hours for the wave to end, but the main boss was never slain. So Naofumi and his party head over to the main boss to see, guess what? 3 heroes arguing. Naofumi is livid, racing over to exactly where he knows the main boss would begin, punching the shadow, forcing it out of hiding, making a Soul Eater. He immediately speeds up and crashes the Soul Eater into the ship as Sparky uses lightning and electrocutes it like crazy, even using his speed to basically just dash around it. Raphtalia finishes it off, making sure that it's dead, but just as they thought it was over, and as he's about to get mad at the other heroes, someone else arrives, as another Soul Eater does as well. But that Soul Eater is instantly killed by their visitor. It's a woman in a black kimono with 2 twin-bladed war fans ready for battle. Naofumi backs up and begins looking at her and says asks who is she and what does she want. You see, I only really want one thing, and that is for all of you to die. Glass begins to attack all 4 of them, but luckily Naofumi could get Raphtalia and Sparky out of the way. Sparky's already pretty fast, so he can get himself out of the way as well, but the other 3 heroes were practically useless. They were just body bags. They get hit and hurt pretty bad and thrown to the side as if they were nothing. Glass even says that the only person that really can keep up with her would be the Speedster hero. But she's not even so sure if he has to protect everyone else. She begins to blast at Motoyasu and also Ren, in which he reluctantly dashes over, saving both of them but taking a blow to the right shoulder. This blow, yes, it will heal up relatively quickly, but nothing quick enough that will basically be before the next conflict that he'll have to do. So he gets ready. Sparky, Raphtalia, and Naofumi line up and get ready to fight Glass. But once the fight begins, he feels that his power isn't enough. He begins to get more frustrated. What if the other heroes were stronger? The other heroes could help me. But this is ridiculous. I'm all on my own. My party members may not be strong enough either, because those damn church members, they won't let us get our class upgrades. What am I supposed to do? What the hell is this world about? This damn country. Naofumi charges in with Sparky and begins to land a couple blows on Glass, but Glass is retaliating, hurting them both pretty badly. He's able to stumble back to his feet, but the rage of everything going on is overwhelming Naofumi. Not only is he being beat by Glass because he's not able to keep up, he's not strong enough and hasn't been able to supply himself with the natural means like the other heroes. Not only that, but you have the kingdom is against him for no apparent reason. The other heroes are a bunch of idiots. Ren, Itsuki, sabotaging other villages in the kingdom. You have Motoyasu, who's doing the same thing, but also believing Naofumi is some horrible person when all he has done is good. Naofumi's frustration is finally at its peak. His anger is finally overwhelming him, and his suit begins to change. With a black circle on his chest, a red lightning bolt, and the mass majority of his red turning to yellow, and slight patches on his arm turning to red, It seems that his color scheme that originally he started with has just reversed. Naofumi has now changed, and his voice is something of a scary proportion.
Back in my world, Flash, you wouldn't have succumbed to this exactly. Not this fast. But I guess you aren't really Barry Allen. You're someone totally different. But still, the result is the same. And now, I'll be able to make a Flash's life a living hell.
Naofumi Iwatani's Curse series has now taken over. Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, has now taken over the entire body of Naofumi. Now his actions are not his own. Now his body is moving on the mindset of someone else. And as Eobard Thawne stares at Glass, he dashes in and shoves his hand straight through her chest, killing her, grabbing her by the throat, and slamming her back down onto the ship. Eobard Thawne rips off both of Glass's arms, making sure that she is not only dead, but finished off entirely, that there is no coming back. Eobard then finishes up, wipes the blood off his clothes, and slightly shakes it off using his vibration. And as his hand begins to vibrate, he regards how nice it feels to be back. He looks toward Raftalia and Sparky and begins to remark,
Yes, it's very nice to be back.
and that right there is a wrap for this first installment of Naofumi, the Legendary Speedster Hero. If you enjoyed this What If Naofumi fanfiction, other known the title as The Lightning, make sure to leave a like, sub, comment down below, and leave any suggestions you have for future what ifs and for whatever you want to see. So I hope y'all enjoyed overall, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.
I don't wanna waste what's left.